I'd like to start off somewhere exotic or unexpected, but that's not where my journey begins. 232 Oldsmore Road. That's where I've lived all my life up until this point. Well, including this point actually, because I'll be commuting to college for the next 4 years. It's the only place I can truly call home. I've had nearly all my memories, experiences, and family here, and I don't expect that to change anytime soon. Anyways, time to get started on cramming my entire life into 5 minutes. I'd like to point out that the audio in this video may be choppy at times, but I've decided to leave this in as a symbol of my imperfection. I voiced this video without a script, so anything I said was likely real, true emotion. After all, this video is supposed to represent me, and I'm nowhere near perfect. These 4 people right here are definitely the people I spend the most time with. That's my dad, brother, me, and my mother. It's who I'm most familiar with and probably most comfortable with. We pretty much do everything together. That's my brother, Glenn. He's 3 years older than me and was always a role model growing up. Currently, he's a high school graduate and works interning at Charter Communications, a program which I'm going to speak about later. And those are my parents, happily married for over 25 years. I could probably never say enough about my mother. She's pretty much just about everything to me. Through hardship and triumph, we've bared it all together. She's inspired me to be so much more than I thought I ever could be, and I appreciate that to more than she can ever know. My father pretty much taught me the opposite side of the spectrum, allowing me to be a more complete and whole individual. I learned a lot in terms of life skills, as well as how to overall be a decent human being. I'm not quite sure where I would be without my parents, but it's probably not nearly as good as I have it now. And these are my grandparents. Unfortunately, they divorced long before I can remember, but even today they remain some of the kindest and loving individuals I've ever met. My cousins, Dylan and Dustin, are the children of my Aunt Stacy and my Uncle Danny. We see them often on all special occasions and holidays, and it's always fun to hang around at their house. My childhood is especially memorable to me, but not necessarily just the positives, despite having a larger impact than the negatives. As some might recall, I used to wear glasses when I was younger, but eventually I just chose not to wear them and remain to have 20/20 vision to this day. I'm not sure exactly how this happened, other than chance, but I'm not going to complain about it. I also used to walk on my toes rather than my whole foot. I know this seems odd, and believe me, everyone else thought so too. I used to see a therapist about this issue as well as wear metal plates in my shoes. Eventually, over time, I just learned to stop doing it. However, every now and again, I'll have a slip-up. And of course, the overarching issue is always my voice. I can never seem to quite talk clearly or loud enough, despite my best efforts or what I sounded like to myself. Even as I'm recording this, I'm likely going to sound different to myself right now than I do when I hear it back on the recording. I'm not quite sure why this is, but the years of speech therapy never seemed to help either. I never got an official diagnosis as I did with my feet, but it's just something I'm gonna have to live with. I'm guessing this is the root of why I've always been so quiet and kept to myself, but I'm not likely to let that hold me back much longer. And yes, if you were wondering, my glasses did have the sunglasses extension. Not only were the issues in my childhood a tremendous influence and impact, but also all the positives and everything that did go right, which was most of the time. Dogs come to mind when I think of this. As a kid, I probably spent more time with them than actual people, and I don't necessarily regret this as I'm older. Here they are, the original 3 I grew up with: Mackenzie, Chloe, and Jada. My 3 sisters, or as I like to call them. They always felt like that to me, being always around and always about my age. They're all past now, but I'll never forget them. They had such an impact on me, how could I? With Mackenzie being the oldest, she was always a watchdog and guarded the house to keep it safe. She was a rescue, and it showed in how grateful she was to be with us. Jada, the second oldest, was also a rescue. She was more on the timid side, always liking to snuggle up with someone or be cuddled in blankets. It wasn't a rare sight to find her all curled up somewhere in the house. And lastly, the youngest, Chloe. I can technically also call her a rescue, being that she was originally my cousin's, but they could no longer take care of her. Thus, we ended up with her, our 3rd dog, to complete our family. As you might be able to tell, she was a little odd and can always make me laugh. The trio still lives on in my memory, and I love looking back at all the moments I had with them. As of more recent years, we now have Randy and Buddy. In the making of this video, Randy is only a few years old and Buddy is only a few months old. One of my favorite parts of coming home is having them always sitting there ready to jump up on me and let me know how happy they are that I came back for them. And with faces like these, how could I possibly stay away? They may not enjoy the torturous costumes as much as we do, but I'm sure they greatly appreciate living here. Each of them are also rescues, with Randy being from Georgia and Buddy being from Arkansas. If you've ever seen a chain around my neck, it carries a pendant. On the inside is actually the fur of all my dogs, and I carry it around with me everywhere I go. It's a very important symbol to me, reminding me of my past and allowing me to look up to the future. It may not seem like it, but a large part of my life has to do with the outdoors, and by that specifically hiking, in which case I think this symbolizes a lot of my adventures. I don't go out as much as I used to, but I still enjoy it. I always loved walking around and seeing the vast wilderness in which we live. It was fascinating to see the different types of environments and creatures that laid about just beyond our line of sight from the outside of the woods. Exploring the unknown has always been a passion of mine, and I'm always happy to do it. When the summer rolls around, I know it's about time for our annual family vacation. I know we'll be bringing tons of food and coolers, as well as our new baseball hats, of which always possess the logo of the best baseball team. In my family, it was usually tradition to go back and forth between Lake George and Cape Cod year after year. I had family in both places, so naturally it just made sense to lodge for free. It is not until a few years ago we decided to venture off and go some other place to have a new adventure. That brings us to New Jersey, in which I went to the boardwalk and several other places around the state. It was fascinating to have a new experience, and I'm very glad to have been a part of it. The following year we decided to check out Hershey, Pennsylvania and the surrounding areas. This is also fascinating and unique, and I do hope to go back sometime. I've also been to New York City several times and always amazed at how different the city life is. Holidays aren't far down the list of things I cherish and appreciate about my childhood, as well as the present and likely the future. Christmas is perhaps one of my favorite holidays, where my family could all come together and be happy and love each other for a day. Of course, the gifts were a nice touch too. I used to host Easter along with my cousins Dustin and Dylan to do an Easter egg hunt, but over time they soon grew out of it and we no longer do this. My brother's birthday falls just 2 weeks before mine, and therefore we usually have a large party to celebrate both of ours. The month of June was always a great month in my childhood, getting out from school and having a great birthday party. As for the future, I can't help but mention how much film has actually influenced my life. This right here is the camcorder I used to record all my videos on, and it's essentially the birthplace of my interest in this whole field. And yes, that is real tape. Knowing there were only 2 video courses in high school, I chose selectively to use those for junior and senior year to come fresh out of them for college. I decided sophomore year I would take photography, and it's not a decision I regret. I started off taking cliche photos of railroad tracks and Mr. Photographer Man, but soon developed a unique and different style. At the end of the year, I came home with the photography award. Not my first achievement, but also not my last. I won't get too much into this, but there's a lot of accomplishments I'm proud of. As much as everyone, including myself, hated this project, it's really the components besides the fieldwork that were to my distaste. I did my fieldwork at Charter Communications with a 32-hour program that allowed me to create my own film and air it on the Community Access channel. Of course, likely no one actually saw it, but it was a good experience to actually have real responsibility in a real production. And of course, nobody ever seems to let me forget about this one. In the fall of last year, I decided it'd be best to commute to college to save money. Needless to say, I ended up accepting at Fairfield University as they offered me a full ride, and that's not something I'm willing to reject. After all these letters, I finally got the one I was looking for, class of 2022. And I also got this free pendant. So that was about all that's worth talking about in my life that I could fit into 5 minutes. I've basically highlighted anything that's important enough to me to talk about, or at least that I want you to know. Maybe when I look back on this video in 20 years, I'll realize just how ridiculous it was. But it's a real reality to me now, and I can't wait to see how much it changes. I may not have traveled much physically, but as long as I've been alive, I've had the journey of a lifetime.